And hello, welcome back to Edric Poon In Company, the podcast where anybody can inspire everybody. Our guest this week is Mr. Marcus Wee, founder and MD of Aftershock PC, a custom PC builder that hand assembles your PCs tailored to your specifications. I met Marcus a couple of years ago at a consumer electronics show, and I found his mind to be extremely sharp. Yes, he talks fast, but his mind is even sharper. Plus, he's fueled by this extremely competitive spirit of his that I really want to dwell into and find out a little bit more about Aftershock story just for you. Let's get on to the podcast. All right. Hey, Marcus, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
All right, man. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to, do this podcast. We really appreciate it.
No worries, I thought it would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, man. Hey, now you've told this story many times already, especially with that article that came back with you and your brother being a 2020 Entrepreneur or Singaporean of the Year nomination. Now, first question is really, you started out in 2012. You've covered that, yes, your first shop is in Serangoon, but you got
Yep.
the idea while you were in Australia. What exactly, right, did you do in Australia, and what made you kind of pick all these things up and kind of bring a new model back to Singapore?
So actually, it was in Canada that we got the idea.
Oh, Canada.
Well, I was a foreign student for quite a number of years. So, I was based in before I was based in Singapore, then Australia, then I went to Canada for exchange, and because I lived in a boarding school, um,
Hmm.
the laptop was a big deal to me, like a gaming laptop, because it was out as a boarding school student. That's your source of entertainment. We have students from the local vicinity, like the other Australians or the Canadians, and after school they go home, they do whatever. But us, the Asian students living there in the boarding house, our only source of entertainment is the gaming laptops that we have. So we get on LAN and play games. And essentially, that made the gaming laptop really matter. And I'm an obsessive person, and I was really obsessed with the laptops that I had. And whatever my parents were willing to buy me at the time. So, which was not exactly a gaming model, but I would obsess over the gaming models. So when I went to Canada, which when I was much older for exchange program when I was studying in university, um, I looked at buying a laptop while I was in Canada, and I bought from one of the boutique firms that is actually based in the US, but they ship to Canada. So I was very impressed by the experience as well as the product. So that's where I was really inspired, and I really wondered why Singapore didn't offer such a service. In fact, at the time when we came in, the price of gaming laptops in Singapore were extremely inflated. Like a laptop that would cost you 1,003, 1,004 in the US would easily cost $3,000 in Singapore. So this could be due to volume and also the fact that there's economies of scale in the US. And of course, in Singapore, you have a smaller volume, with a smaller population, and on top of that, you need to offer the same level of servicing, and economies of scale really helps with that. And yeah, of course, we learned all that as we delved into the business. But that was the trigger point when I bought a product in the US, from the US, basically, when I was in Canada. And I really liked the experience, not just the product itself, which we eventually went to the same factory that made those products, because I absolutely loved the product. And at that time, that factory was really a leader in terms of the enthusiast category products. Like they went for products that were more workstation looking, but we really liked the contents of the products themselves. Yeah, so just wondered why no one was doing it here, and that was the trigger. But I didn't immediately do it.
Interesting. And you were talking about the experience, right? Now, what is this experience, or what was the experience like for you? Was it
So
from the start that you ordered it, or is it because you walked into the shop and they just treated you differently? What was it like?
well, it wasn't. It was I bought it from an e-commerce store. So and essentially it was everything about the sales process, like talking to someone that actually knew what's going on. I mean, before that, Singapore used to be almost 100%. When you buy a PC, it's either from sibling where you're DIY, or if you're buying a gaming laptop, you go to Challenger or you go to a superstore, or the best, whichever. And typically, it's a challenge to find someone who will talk tech with you, who will talk specs with you, like to go into detail, right? Like have a conversation about, let's say there are three graphics cards. Back then when I first got into this, it was a 600 series, 6080M, 6060M, 6070M, whatnot, and you couldn't really have a conversation with anyone about these things all the way back then. Like if you want to have a conversation, let's say I want to run back then the games like Warcraft 3, games like Company of Heroes, the first in that series, and I want to run it at this resolution, this settings. I couldn't have a conversation with a salesperson about any of these things. Whereas when I spoke to the American company, I was really impressed. They know what's going on. They know their user demographic. They really they're of the same user base, and they sort of know what you're looking for. So you can have a conversation and you don't feel like you're trying to explain what you're looking for at all. They immediately know. So that was the first impressive part. And secondly was how they followed up with the actual sale itself, all the way to the delivery. You know how they follow up with you the entire way, and even after receiving the product, if you have questions, it's really easy to get a hold of them. You can just get someone on the line. You can talk about the product. You can get things set up right, basically. So it was just the whole feeling of being like covered from end to end. It's not just about selling a product. Not to say the Singaporean stores are bad. I mean, it's just that we have a very generic style of doing things here back then, and it's still very much the same way for big malls and whatnot.
Right. And now when you started out, right, in Singapore, now you opened up the company, you basically cashed out your entire insurance policy and you got money from investors, from family and all this. Now, you took a super all or nothing approach. You just basically said, this is it and I will make it happen. Was that the mentality when you started the company?
Yeah, pretty much. So I wanted to do the company all the way when I was in university, when I came back from Canada to SMU, and I actually presented it in the entrepreneurship class. So all the way from there, I really wanted to do this business model. But back then I was a bit more like, I was also quite reserved and a bit realistic, and I didn't have the funds for it. So I went to work at a multinational corporations for just like 2 or 3 years, and I saved up some money, as well as I got some help from family initially when we started. So it was really all or nothing. Like, I was working as an IT administrator at a research facility, and essentially my colleague who was doing everything with me, he was an American guy, he left. So I was alone, and I decided maybe then was the time to get started. So I spoke to a partner and shared the idea and wanted to go ahead. So we started planning, and it was pretty much all or nothing. But I was not very mature back then. It's not like I had some magical mindset. I just went into it and just thought, okay, I'll try to do this. I didn't really think of the consequences. Also quite, wasn't so far-sighted at that time. Yeah.
Did you have a plan B?
No plan B at all. But there was a lot of fear because, like, my dad had said that my parents were quite skeptical at first. Of course, they warmed up a lot later. So, I really wanted to. I was really afraid at the time of, if I screwed up, like, it would be held on me forever. So that was quite a driver for me, actually.
Right. And so you hear this in a lot of like business or leadership talks, right, or motivational talks as well. Some entrepreneurs, right, are so fueled by either their will to succeed or is that fear, right, to fail. So in your side, you don't believe in plan B, I think, and you just went straight forward. Was it that fear or that insecurity that just kept you going?
Yeah, I think at that time, wanting to succeed was probably 30%. The fear of failure was probably 70%. I think fear of failure is something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't like to talk about because everybody loves to paint like a beautiful story. But yeah, I mean, it's a very real thing, right? Like in Singapore, and not just Singapore, in the world today, social media, we're all very affected by how others perceive us, and we shouldn't be, obviously, but it definitely plays a factor, even subconsciously.
Right. And your first shop, do you remember going shopping for it, looking around and saying, hey, this is the place I must have it? Or were you looking around different places and you said, maybe this is the best, the cheapest one to get?
We wanted to get started ASAP because, with a business like ours, we order products in from overseas and it takes months to come, like really ages for production and for it to come. So we wanted to make sure the products had somewhere to land when they arrive. So we were on a ticking timer, and we wanted to find the right location. And at that time, budget was a big concern. So we pretty much went for the biggest space we could get at a most reasonable price. And yeah, it wasn't the most glamorous space, but it was pretty spacious. We were okay with it. We looked at a couple of properties, and this one was like $4,000 a month for like 1,800 square feet, and it was relatively central. Though the parking really sucked at that spot, but as we all didn't drive at that point of time, we didn't think too much about it. But we wanted to be mostly focused on deliveries at that point of time. So yeah, I mean, we were quite happy with the space that we found. We thought it was quite a steal compared to everything else in the location.
And you opened up with the e-commerce model, but do you also remember your first ever walk-in customer?
Yeah, of course. It was like we rolled out the red carpet for the guy, and he really he really negotiated the hell out with us. But we wanted proof of concept. We wanted people to try our products, and yeah, he loved it. He posted about it, and more people came. Like, so that's just part and parcel of starting a business. You want to win customers over. Like, you get people to try your products. If you truly believe in your products, you want to get it in the hands of people, and if it's good, people are naturally going to talk about it.
In between, from that day all the way until now, you've expanded huge amounts. I mean, just the place in Vanderbilt is huge. But now we also want to talk a little bit more about your growth and your international expansion, right? At what point in your business planning did you actually go, I just want to do Singapore, or am I going to go global? Or was it that I want to start regional first?
I mean, that's a very hard question, right? Because in our line of business, like computers and computer components, it's not just about wanting to grow. There's several reasons for the business wanting to grow. One of the big ones is employee empowerment, because when people follow you, when people work for your company, you got to create opportunity for them. A lot of good and capable people, they don't just want the status quo. They want progression. They want a path forward. They want to see that there's a vision for the company, and that's one driver for expansion and growth. And the other is because you need scale, right? You need scale to be able to produce advantages for your company. So one reason why Aftershock is in such an advantageous position now, why we were able to take that amount of market share, we're significantly bigger than the nearest competitors, is simple. When we have multiple countries, we have huge scale. We buy components in huge bulk, and we're able to offer a better combination of components for the same price as the competitors do. And there's nothing to do with anything other than the fact that instead of ordering 100 SSDs, I'm ordering 10,000, and that just means I'm able to negotiate better for better prices, and our customers win in the end. So that's another big driver for scale. Of course, the third is just wanting to grow the company and your own ambition. But I'll say for me, the first two are definitely more of the major driving factors for me wanting to scale and wanting to expand the company. Definitely, I think number two is a big one to me. Like right now, if you were to look at the product offerings we have and just compare spec to spec with anywhere else in Singapore, we're already offering it's quite hard to beat, and it's just purely because of scale.
That's a very interesting perspective. I never saw it as the economy of scale part, and I really love the first point that you brought up, which was employee empowerment. What are one of the things that makes Aftershock culture uniquely Aftershock?
I would say that, I mean, the culture has changed a lot as the company grew. I felt the early days were absolute perfection. Like everybody was like so gunning for it. As you get bigger, it's harder to maintain that. I think we're working very hard on improving and always evolving and learning from it. But it definitely isn't simple. Like there's when it comes to people, there's just so many factors. Like a big belief of mine is that if somebody is giving their all for you, you got to make sure that they're rewarded. As simple as that, especially if the company does well. But it's very difficult because you're in a company, maybe there's 150, 200 people, everyone thinks they're doing well. Like everyone thinks they're giving their all, but from a perspective of the team leaders or whatnot, you can really see who's performing, who's not. But you have to be able to reward those who are performing well and who are delivering and who are trying their best. And there's a mixture because you have people who are extremely capable, who are not extremely hardworking or driven, which have their place and they're really important to the company. And you also have people who may not be as magically capable or may not be as magically talented, but they work hella hard and they hella deserve that recognition as well. So the company's job is to identify these two types of people. And yeah, it's definitely challenging. We learn a lot because you hire lots of young people. Sometimes expectations are not aligned and not set early, and you just have to learn as you go. And yeah, there's something that we're working on. We're very happy with the progress that we've made. The company is split into quite a number of departments, so I would say I wouldn't be realistic here. Like quite a number of departments are very good. I love the culture. There's some where we need to improve things, and yeah, definitely as a company, we just try to keep growing. That's all.
Right. I'm sure that this entire journey, right, has also given you a lot of introspective insight to what areas you are strong in, what areas that perhaps you need to grow in as well. Now, when you went through this entire process and trying to build the company further, right, what were the areas in that you went, okay, I really need to get somebody to do this for me because I can't do this part?
So I'm quite an obsessive person. So I spent years trying to tank everything myself. Like in fact, I was involved in the service department and everything, and that's why the company got quite a lot of good reviews and stuff. like for years, and I couldn't let go of it. It was like there's just so much fear if I hand it over, it wouldn't go exactly the way I want. And I had to learn the hard way that you have to let go past a certain point. Like when it gets to certain size, you have to let people try. Like you have to let people try, and you have to let them screw up. Because when you let people take over, you can't expect they're going to take over and everything's going to go super smooth. You're going to have to let them do it, let them experience a wide variety of challenges, and then they're going to screw some of them up. And that's how people grow and how people move forward. What's important is just to take it constructively. And if you ask me like what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, I know for sure I'm a strategic person. Very much. I'm very good at doing product strategy, product positioning. I'm very good at setting up the products in such a way that it's very hard for most of the competitors to compete. Like just because we position a better product for the target market than almost everyone. And yeah, as the biggest player now, we've essentially got a bullseye on us. Everybody is is looking at us, and essentially, that's where product positioning comes in. But if you ask me what I'm weak at, yeah, I'm weak at process flow. I mean, that's where I bring in professionals, people who have expertise in this area, try to help us. And every business owner, not just every business owner, in the business there might be multiple partners. Every partner brings something different to the table. I'm just the product guy. My partner, who's actually my brother, he's the marketing guy. So we have very different skill sets, and I'm actually grateful for that. Like if you have a company with 3 founders and all founders have the same skill set, that's just not the most balanced sort of setup. But yeah, like delegation is a big thing. You need to delegate work to people, things that you're not good at. You got to trust them, and even if you disagree, you got to let them have a shot at it.
Yeah, they could surprise us in some ways, right? Actually doing something different, but yet getting a great result from it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I've been surprised quite a number of times, like pleasantly surprised by them just doing something and doing it differently from how I would have done it. And I'm like, oh wow, okay, that's better than how I would have done it. So I mean, of course, it's gone the other way as well, like quite terribly. But yeah, but it's just life, right? Like you live and learn.
Okay, now back to the strategy, right? Of your international expansion and probably global conquest and domination. That's probably what you're looking for, right? Why Malaysia? Why Australia?
Okay, Australia is the country I grew up in. I grew up in Singapore till I was like 13, and I spent like 5 years in Australia, and I have a lot of close friends there. It's also a market which I feel is quite laid back, and I also like, and I also like the place a lot and the people, and it's just a place where we wanted to do business. It was very natural. We had contacts there. I'm very familiar with the place. We love the gaming communities there, and it's in our side of the world. And yeah, and Malaysia is obvious. Like it's just the simplest expansion path, and with a bigger market, and that the product lineups over in Malaysia don't have to be as complex, because the demographic also looks for specifically like for example for laptops, the 1650 and the 3050 models are very popular over there. So the product planning is also more straightforward. It's also firstly to get the scale that we wanted, and Malaysia and Australia were the most straightforward for us, like basically the lowest hanging fruit in terms of the execution. We had contacts there. We knew people. We knew the locations fairly well, what the customers were looking for. So that's why we chose these 2 countries first.
Right. And what's next for you then?
Well, there's quite a number of things. We're actually, there's some stuff that I can share and can't share, and that we are in talk with like all I can say is we're in talks with external parties as well, and we want to do more expansion, obviously, hoping to do Southeast Asia and possibly other countries. So we'll see how that goes. But in the end, the end game is to get, a kick-ass volume, like so that we're at a size where we can offer absolutely untouchable deals in Singapore, for example. It's really pretty hard. If you take a look at our websites, it's pretty hard, like to find deals similar to ours. Like it's gone to the point where competitors will try to poke holes in what we have, but it's pretty hard because we list everything black and white. Right now, that's our policy, and we're moving heavily that way. We list, like, if you want to buy a PC from us, every component is listed in black and white, and the deals are really hard to beat. We offer a lot for what you're paying for, and yeah, having more scale will just give us more bargaining power, more access to just items that you couldn't get without volume, like exclusive asset access, and that will make just our PCs better and better and really hard to beat. And one big thing there is just the ability to develop our own products as well. Like if you have volume and scale, you can approach factories and you can customize and develop your own products. Like some factories require a certain volume that can't be achieved by having 1 or 2 countries. So that's another driving force.